Lasting Impression by Alexandra Bayles. When it was built in 1925, the palace, with its 7 floors, was considered high-rise. Now, modest in height, it is still arguably the best hotel in the area. 109 Canadian dollars standard double. Sound okay? I'd asked. Derek just stared at the road and shrugged. 5 years engaged, and there'd always been some reason not to marry. First there was the sex, then there was the money, then there was the fraud investigation, acquitted. Now he had begun to cultivate an ugly paunch. I was beginning to regret our marriage, and it hadn't even started yet. You might ask why we were together. You might well. The hotel was pretty from the outside. Large arched windows, slightly squared off, each pane sporting gold calligraphy. Coffee, tea, breakfast, lunch, dinner. A driving holiday in British Columbia was supposed to bring us closer together. The thought disgusted me somewhat. It still does. The lady behind the desk, blonde ponytail, plastic cheerleader legs, made no comment on my appearance. In my stocking feet and vile blue fleece, with muddy hiking boots in hand, I took the key I was offered and padded over to the lift. Though I suppose I looked worse later on, she made no comment then either. I rode up to the 3rd floor alone while Derek parked the car. The lift opened onto a narrow landing. Varnished dark wood floors, red runners, blue and orange flock wallpaper. Our room was less oppressive, French style, pastel green and cream. I drew myself a bath fractionally too hot, with the floral bubbles provided. By the time Derek came cursing into the room, I was already soaking. I heard him make straight for the minibar. "What's wrong, sweetheart?" He appeared at the bathroom door and snatched one of the glasses from the shelf over the sink. He had scraped the car trying to squeeze between a pickup truck and a dumpster. At the car hire place, he had laughed when I said we should get the accidental damage waiver. He was an excellent driver. Maximum no claims. Never had an accident in his life. "Oh, Derek, you didn't," I groaned. "Well, that was it." Perhaps I should do the driving? What had I been doing anyway? He'd a mind to give me a slap. Oh, I didn't mean that, Derek, but... Well, you should have heard the names. Calm down, Derek. It doesn't matter. It's one of those things. Now I was patronising him. Now I was undermining his authority. Who was I to tell him to calm down? Who was I? And who would be paying for the damned car anyway? He came to the side of the bath. I thought he was going to apologise. You know, his shirt was untucked and the bottom button undone, and as he crouched down beside the bath, his dough belly squeezed with a plip over his belt. I felt like retching. He came too close to my cheek, his face puckered in rage. I was used to his anger, used to his names and threats and insecurities. He whispered into my ear, and the wisps of my hair recoiled from his breath and tickled my face. What he whispered was cruel, was ugly, a threat, a promise. He held his whiskey glass in one hand and, with the heel of the other, braced himself against the rim of the bath. Was I listening? Was I even listening to him? Did I not think he would do it? In truth, I wasn't really listening, but holding my breath so that I couldn't smell him, turning my eyes away so that I couldn't see the string of spittle stretched between his teeth. Did I not think he was man enough to do it? Did I not think he was a man? And then he was on his feet, above me. He brought his arm down hard and smashed the glass, and the liquid ran down the lovely Art Deco tiles. I sighed. Derek stood for a fraction of a second and stared at me. Lying below him in the bath, I stared right back. Then he stormed out of the bathroom, as usual, leaving someone else to clean up his mess. He took the keys from the dresser and slammed the door behind him. It was a struggle to get out of the bath. Perhaps I was dizzy from the heat, I'd wondered. At last, seeing that I'd begun to shrivel, I heaved myself from the water. I was glad that the mirror over the sink was steamed up, as I was sure I looked a shock. My head was pounding, from the argument, from the too-hot bath. In the bedroom I lay on the dishevelled sheets. I must have fallen asleep because I didn't see her arrive. She wore a peacock green dress in silk, which fell in strips like feathers. Her hair was short and stopped suddenly at her jawline. A silver slide held it back on one side. On the other, it fell across her eye and one half of her forehead. She was seated in the chair under the window, and I noticed it was dark outside. I must have been asleep for a few hours, I'd thought. It wasn't like Derek to be gone so long. He had these tantrums, he stormed out, but he always came back with his tail of sorts between his legs. "What are you doing in my room?" She looked at me and smiled. She said it was not my room at all, but hers. "I'm afraid you're mistaken, love." She shook her head. No, she had had this suite for 70 years. It was hard to see her face. The window threw her into silhouette, but she did not seem to be old enough for that to be true. "There must be a mistake. Perhaps it's a different room you stayed in. This is the 3rd floor." She said she was happy to share. She said she was glad of the company. I got up from the bed, now damp as well as crumpled from where I'd been lying. I was still wet. Maybe I hadn't slept so long after all. I looked down, and my hands immediately went to cover myself up. "Sorry," I said. She giggled, a young woman's laugh. "Look, maybe I'll call the concierge and we can sort you out another room." She laughed again, louder, and gestured to the telephone with a long cigarette holder. Without taking my eyes from her, I reached for the telephone on the bedside table. I dripped onto the nightstand, and the receiver slipped through my still damp hand, once, twice. I looked at her suspiciously, and she laughed again. I think that was the moment when I began to panic, and didn't even stop to ask myself why I hadn't done so already. "Look, I don't know what you're doing here, but you can't stay." My voice wavered. She held up her palms, the cigarette emitting a long arc of smoke as she did so, and told me to calm down. I remembered Derek then, that I had said the same to him. "My fiancé will be back soon and—" At this, she gave a derisive yelp and stood up from the chair. She came toward me and told me not to be so naive. Derek wouldn't be back. They don't come back afterwards, she'd informed me. That was a myth. She tipped her head back and took a drag on a cigarette. It was this that caused the bang of hair across her right temple to fall back. A fluke, an habitual tic. I think I gagged. Her eye, from the top of the cheekbone to the upper lid, was tilted back into her head, caved in. A flap that might fall open if she leaned forward. And above that, nothing but bone, like broken china. Embarrassed, she tugged her forelock back over her face and made a gesture with her hand as if to bat something away. "What happened to you?" She told me she'd been pressing her husband's suit when she came across a piece of paper. The Palace Hotel, Kamloops, it had read, room 36. She had always suspected his disloyalty. At least I never had to worry about that with Derek. But never the temper. He took the lamp stand, Art Deco number in brass with coloured glass inlay and, well, let's just say that the design made such an impression that she just couldn't get it out of her head. I sat down on the corner of the bed. I felt the exhaustion return and wondered if I was ill. Perhaps that's why I took it so well. "So you're—" I asked. "Yes," she said matter-of-factly. She was indeed one of those. She had been here ever since. "And you want me to tell someone?" She laughed again. She told me to tell whomever I wanted. Nobody would listen to me. She shrugged. 70 years was a long time, she said. Her husband was probably dead. "But what about Derek?" she asked. "Did I love him?" "We're engaged," I replied, and lay my head back on the pillow. She scoffed and said that she could see right through me. "No," I admitted. "No, I don't love him." She wondered then why had I let him treat me so badly. Why had I put up with him? Alone is worse than together under any circumstances. At least I'm not alone. She shook her head. Was she not proof that that was untrue? "I suppose, but still—" I yawned. She smiled at me tenderly with her head on one side, her good side. "Perhaps," she said, "I would have changed my mind by morning." The next thing I remember is being woken by voices. The radio? In the bathroom. I felt blurry. Light streamed through the open curtains. I marvelled at my capacity to sleep after such a steaming row. "Derek," I called. "Is that you? You woke me. Look, I'm sorry." The carpet around the bed squelched underfoot, shattering the dream of the night before. A man in blue overalls emerged from the bathroom. "Maintenance." "Oh, great. Look, there's water everywhere." "Oh, hello, why the camera?" I laughed. No reply. No wonder, I realised when I glanced down. I was still naked. "Oh, I'm so sorry. If I could just get into the bathroom for a towel." He went out onto the landing where another man stood, breathing heavily and leaning over his knees. Inside the bathroom, a third man, in a suit, stood with his back to me. "Derek?" He turned. Not Derek. And approached. He didn't look at me. Instead, he continued to walk until I had to back away, and even then I wasn't sure how he had left the room with me standing in the doorway. Even when I looked down at the bath still full, but with no bubbles left, and saw the glass, and saw the blood, and saw the woman there naked and soaking wet, and with the thick base of a tumbler embedded in her skull, I did not completely understand. Silly girl. Only when I knelt where he had, and looked into my open eyes, only then did I get it. Standing, I glanced into the unsteamed mirror. I sighed and dripped profusely onto the pretty hand-painted tiles. "Well," offered a familiar voice, "at least you're not alone."
A Lasting Impression by Alexandra Bayles was read by Rachel Bavidge. The producer was Gemma Jenkins.